Two mugs in a workshop. Previously on Two Mugs in a Workshop. We took a huge gamble when we bought this BMW G310R off eBay. Untried, untested, with no recorded mileage. In previous episodes we fixed enough problems to get the bike through its MOT test, as well as a few others that were nothing to do with the MOT test. And in the last episode we identified a whole bunch of problems. So many problems, in fact, that I created a snagging list to keep this project on track, and so we all know what needs to be done. In this episode of Two Mugs in a Workshop. I was just setting up to do a bit of recording and Marc's breaking things, so let's take a little wander across the workshop. Look, if you ever wondered what a roll of duct tape was for, look at that, he's bust his torch. He's only had it, how long had it? About 2 weeks, Mark?
2 weeks.
2 weeks? I've had mine for what, how long, Mark?
Probably 12 months.
Yeah, I don't do any work though, do I? So that's probably why. Yeah, don't do any serious stuff. So just mess about with videos and lark about making the coffee around there and stuff. So that'd explain it. So there you go. The funniest thing is I found out after the event that Mark actually smashed the torch with a hammer. He swung at a suspension component, completely missed it and took out the torch instead. Got a burning my retinas out, that thing. It's brighter than the surface of the sun. Still chuckling about that one. However, let's get on to some mechanical items. For me, this is the most challenging area of the bike. 2 reasons really. Number one, I'm not a bike mechanic and I've been very clear about that. And secondly, it's the area where the cost could add up quite quickly. So I want to make sure that we've got a solid base for the rest of the project before we start worrying too much about the pretty stuff. Let's start by changing the air filter. Going to change the air filter on the BMW. Got genuine BMW parts there. Ever so easy to change these, as you can imagine. So probably the hardest part, getting the box open. Fitting a new air filter couldn't be easier. Just remove the 2 clips on the air filter housing, lift it away, then just remove the old filter and replace the new filter in the same orientation, and then simply snap it all back together again. The coolant change is probably one of the bigger items on the list for me. There's a couple of reasons. Number one, when I bought the bike, there was no coolant in the expansion tank. So is there a leak somewhere? Is it just a maintenance oversight by the previous owner? I really don't know, but I really want to find out. Imagine if the coolant's leaking internally in the engine, I could have a much bigger problem on my hands. Also, a build-up of electrolytes in a coolant system causes degradation to the radiator, to the pipework, even to the internals of the engine and the cylinder head. So it's important that coolant is changed on a regular basis. Okay, so while I have a coffee, do the coolant change. All you need is a 5mm hex. It's going to be this bolt here underneath the water pump housing. I can't believe that just fell off, guys. Right, while I drink coffee and Mark does the proper work over there, coolant change on the bike. This one should be really easy. All you're going to need is a 5mm hex head. I'd choose these. I cannot believe that reflector's just dropped off in the middle of filming. Again. Coolant change on the bike next. So, now carry on, Mark. Carry on making a noise.
I'll do the car impression.
It's good to have someone working around here anyway. You carry on, mate.
I don't call it work.
Yeah, just carry on. Okay, while I have a coffee, just going to do the coolant change on the bike. All you're going to need is a 5mm hex. It's this bolt here that you're going to remove. This one here is the coolant drain plug. It's right underneath the hosing for the pipe off the water pump, all right? It's not that plug there. That plug there is to do with putting special tools in to lock the engine at TDC. So this one right there. Simple case, release that. You're going to need a new washer. Recommend a new washer. You can get those from dealer. They're cheap as anything. They're pennies. Something underneath it, obviously, to catch the coolant. I'd recommend changing the radiator cap because they are known to go on these. They're not cheap either, but you know, it is what it is. Take it, leave it. It's entirely up to you. And that's about it, really. That's all you'll need to do the job. It's simple as. Some new coolant to go in. I bought the G310R type coolant. It's a greeny blue colour, and I'll be honest, I messed this up so many times this part of video that I've actually already done the coolant change. So, well, there you go. Told you we were amateurs. Hi, welcome back. Having a few challenges testing the cooling system pressure on the bike, mainly because I can't find the right adapter to go on the top of the radiator. I've got one that's very close, but it doesn't seem to quite hold the pressure. The BMW radiator cap looks a bit like a Japanese sports car, maybe something like off a Mazda or something like that. But it's got two seals on the inside. I'll show you some close-ups on this. There's two rubber seals on the inside of the cap. But in a nutshell, we're using a commercially available pressure testing kit, which is a bit like a bike pump. You literally put a cap on the top of the radiator. I've clamped off the overflow hose. That shouldn't be required, but just in case it is leaking back somewhere there up to the expansion tank, I risk blowing that. The BMW instructions state to pump this up to 1.5 bar, but for me that's a bit too strong. I've gone for about just over 1 bar, and by and large it's holding pressure, to be honest. The pressure gauge is there or thereabouts, but it is very, very, very slightly creeping down. The good news is there's no puddles on the floor. There's no external leaks anywhere. I can actually hear air escaping around the top of the radiator cap, just very slightly, just making a little bubbling kind of noise. So I suspect that's where it's coming from. So at this point, I'm not overly worried. So let's get on to some close-ups and I can show you exactly what's going on. Here's the pressure testing kit. You can see there's a multitude of adapters, but it's primarily these kind of radiator caps are looking at, the traditional metal radiator cap. And the one in my hand is actually the BMW one. The only difference being there was a seal where my thumb was on the base of the cap. There was a black rubber seal around there, and I've picked that off in a bid to try and secure the air from escaping out of the pressure testing kit. So I'll show you how I've done that, and I'll also give you the adapter number out of this kit. Not that it's quite right. There's a proper BMW one, but clearly I'm not going to spend money on that. It'll be an absolute fortune. So let's take a look at the actual radiator cap. So it's number 4 in the kit. It's this one here. And if I turn it upside down, you can see the seal that I pulled out of the old BMW radiator cap down at the bottom there. And I've just laid it over loose. It doesn't fit very well. It's not supposed to be there. And I'm hardly surprised it's not holding pressure. So all we do is we install this onto the top of the radiator. I've gone handheld just to get you in here. You can see there I've just used a pair of mole grips just to clamp off the hose between the top of the radiator and the overflow expansion tank. And this is the adapter which just pushes on and twists like any conventional radiator cap. So, sorry guys, had to stop recording there while I got that on. Needed 2 hands free. And as you can see, it's got a neck on it for the pump. So if I attach the pump onto the top, there we go. That's now on and connected. There's a pressure release valve there. Once you pump it up, we can let the pressure go. So I'm just going to put the camera down again. I'm going to pump it up to just over 1 bar. Okay, so the pressure's pumped up to about 1.25 bar. BMW say 1.5, I think that's a bit high. And that's what the actual standard pressure cap is calibrated to. So it'll let go the pressure at about 1.5 bar if it ever gets to that. And actually, since I've refitted that, that's holding a little better. It is still dropping ever so slightly, and I mean really slightly. It's a very small drop. There's no external leaks anywhere, coolant. I guess it could be inside the engine, but we'll say that that's unlikely at the moment. So I'm going to take this crude test as a success, and I'm going to continue with the coolant change. Good news. The reason I was losing pressure is that second seal I'd added from the old BMW radiator cap wasn't sitting quite flush. After a bit of careful repositioning, I managed to get the pressure test to hold for a good 20-minute period. So I know there's no external leaks and I know there's no internal leaks. I'm really happy with this. The good news is that you can buy the Sykes Picker Vent cap. It's number 4 on this photograph. That's the part number, and you can quite easily combine that with a cheaper pressure testing kit and build yourself a really economical way of testing the coolant pressure on your BMW G310. Time to let the coolant drain plug go then. Let's see what comes out. There we go. It's a 5mm hex. There we go. Perfect. It's running straight out everywhere, all over that under tray, but my container is catching it for now. I'm going to feel him. We're going to have a bit of a spurt on our ends though once I pull that out. Let's move the container a tad. Yeah, there we go. Actually, that coolant looks nice and clean that's coming out. That's a good sign as well. But you only need a litre or so it just makes sense to change that while we're in there. So we'll just let that continue to empty out. And while it's draining, you can see the little metal washer there that came from BMW. So I've thrown that away because I'm going to replace that as well. So I'm just going to let that finish draining. I'll let Stan go and do what us mugs do best, to drink coffee, while that just continues to trickle out all over the workshop floor. Got my coolant ready to go in the bike, now it's finished draining. I'm going to use deionised water, and I've got this Zircol 48, which is basically a G48 type coolant. I'm going to mix it 50-50. I like these little bottles because they're graduated on the side, so I'm going to put 500ml of coolant in, and I'm going to top the rest up with the deionised water straight into the radiator. Here we go with the coolant then. So far so good, no leaks. Just stop and check how much I've put in. Still got a bit to go there. Even if it's slightly over mixed, I'm not going to worry about it. I'd rather have too much in there than not enough. About another 100ml to go. Oops. Poured that in a bit too quickly. That's about right there, somewhere around there anyway. So now in with some water. And this is assuming, of course, that we got all of the coolant out before. It's bubbling down. Going to take a little while, I think, just to get down. It's worth just giving the pipes a quick squeeze as you're topping it up. Just help burp the system. looking all right there. Okay, so that seems to be reasonably well filled and bled. We're going to have to bleed it obviously when we run the bike, and the next thing is to do is just to top up that expansion tank a bit as well. Get a bit of coolant in there, which we didn't have any in there before, remember. So I'm just going to do that, top up the expansion tank, and we should be good. Bit of advice there, give the hoses, you've got the bottom hose on this side and a top hose on the other side of the bike. Give them both a good squeeze as you're filling up the radiator, because it will settle down and you'll get a little bit more in the rad. Once the radiator's full, I've got the new, brand new cap, so I'm going to fit that. Just make sure that's on securely. And then, just out of interest as well, if I can get the focus off on this thing, you can see on the top of the radiator cap, there's the 1.5 bar we were talking about on the top. So that cap's calibrated to 1.5 bar. Okay, so now it's just a matter of topping up the expansion tank. I can't start the bike at the moment, so I'm just going to fill up the expansion tank till it's about, up to the max line on the expansion tank. And then when I can run the bike, hopefully, if anything, the level on the expansion tank's going to drop and I can bleed it out then. There we go, right on the max level. So once I've got all of the parts from BMW, talking of which, Justin's here, look, here's Justin from BMW, the camera shy BMW parts man. Look, he comes in this every day. Look at them there, look, yeah. More parts. Look, he comes in his BMW van every day. So I'm just going to go and pay for some parts and then I'll go back to it. Coolant level topped up. So once I get the spark plug in and of course the fuel tank back on, then we can get it running and bleed it out. But for now it can just stand, it'll be fine. With the cooling system topped up, can you take a look at this radiator guard? I don't particularly like the look of this one. Clearly it offers some protection from stones flying up from the wheel, but there are aftermarket solutions out there, of which I've purchased one. You can always put it back on if it looks rubbish. It's a matter of 3 bolts, 2 at the bottom and presumably 1 up at the top here. We'll let those go, remove the old guard, and I've got no idea how the new Chinese one will go on, but we'll soon find out. All right, guys, good news is that once you let those 2 bottom bolts go, there is no bolt at the top. It kind of looks like this bolt goes right the way through, but it doesn't. Look, it just hooks over the top of the radiator. So that's the old guard off. Absolutely easy. I mean, you could even take that off if you were cleaning and do some blow the radiator out and get rid of all of the dust and the rubbish in there, look. So let's have a go at putting the new one on. I'll show you the new radiator guard in a sec, but it very much looks like that the 2 bolts holding the radiator in up at the top there, they've got to come out. So just going to remove those out the way. Hopefully the radiator won't drop off and explode on the floor as I've just filled it up. And then we'll see if we can get the new guard in place, and I'll show you the new guard and I'll talk you through it. Both of those bolts are out now. I'm just about to put the guard on, but look at the amount of junk debris between those. So Marc's got the airline, and he just very gently blow it out. And as he comes over this side, let's see the amount. Come over this side, Marc. See the amount of stuff coming out of there. Fair bit there. Don't worry about the coolant, that's just where I spilt it, topping up. But you've got to just be very careful with this. You really don't want to point it directly at the airline. You want at the radiator. You want a bit of a gap between the airline and the fins. Otherwise, stuff gets bent. A lot of debris came out that radiator. Still looks a little bit grotty, but it's better than it was. So let's crack on. Let's get the radiator guard in place. This is the guard that I went for. Perhaps not the best view of it. It'll look better on the bike though. On the rear of it, you see some rubbery kind of strips that'll go against the radiator to stop it from knocking and
doing damage. They actually came in the box separate and I had to stick them on. So that's all ready to go. The holes look like they line up to the original bike, so the two top ones that you can see just about in shot there should replace the original bolts. And again, we'll leave the original bolts in at the bottom. It did come with 2 bolts in the box, but I don't think we're going to need them, but we'll find out. There we go, that's all fitted. What I would say is the 2 top bolts, they're obviously holding the radiator in place. I mean, that plate lines up beautifully. It was £6 on AliExpress, that plate. The bottom 2 though, if you take a quick look at the bolts, they sit out a little bit because they've got necks on the bolts, on the original bolts. They're okay though, you just want to very, very slightly nip those. They're not holding anything in place apart from this plate, so they don't need to be tight at all. Personally, I think they look okay. You can always change them later on. And from the front of the bike, if I come out of the light, you can just see the emblem through there. I think it tidies it up a bit. Can't see a horrible dirty radiator behind, and I'm hoping it gives a little bit more protection than the standard unit. And easy enough to put the standard one back on if you need to later.